All right. Okay, so yeah, tonight's workshop, we're going to use the rest of our time here together to go through like the core fundamentals of what sets DSA apart from many other organizations on the left in how we approach electoral politics and electoral campaigns. But we're actually going to start with some big picture kind of like organizing culture stuff, which actually is really important because our campaigns kind of live or die based on the kind of like organizing culture and community we build in DSA. And so, as the slide kind of says, right, like I'm a firm believer that if you join DSA, while you may be coming from a more traditional kind of activist background, everyone who joins DSA has the potential to be an organizer and be a leader in building class struggle campaigns and organizing to build a mass movement of the multiracial working class. That isn't just important because of our theory of change. It's also really important for us to enact our vision and actually organize for the wins we want to achieve. We really can't pull off campaigns if people just participate as individuals. We need them seeing themselves as organizers who can bring more people into our work and more people into our movement. And so for me, I like to break it down to like three kind of key positions, right? So we should be kind. We should treat all comrades with the utmost respect and kindness. But we should be welcoming. We should socialize with new members at in-person events and introduce ourselves whenever possible. We want to make ourselves available as a resource to people, especially if we are a member of the chapter that's been around for a while and has seen some campaigns and maybe is, organized for a few years. And lastly, we really want to focus on being inclusive. We want to avoid forming cliques and walling off DSA knowledge. We want to give new members a direct path for future involvement in DSA, right? So we need to be mindful that people who join may not be coming into this organization with the same knowledge of DSA, of organizing, or of socialist theory. And we have to remember, right, we are not a subculture. A subculture is something that defines itself in opposition to the dominant culture, and we don't want to do that. We want to build a mass movement that is welcoming to all. Well, most of everybody. There's some people that we can maybe not bring in. Okay, so an unhealthy culture ruins everything, right? So DSA, big tent organization, lots of different perspectives on politics, on strategy. No two DSA members believe the same thing, right? They just don't. And so we are always going to find ourselves in disagreement or in debate, but our ability to debate makes us stronger, not weaker. And so when we identify members who maybe disagree with a strategy that we're pursuing or work we're trying to organize, it's important that we don't shut them out, but that we intentionally bring them in to talk through those differences and try to reach consensus and build a unifying program. And this is really important for electoral campaigns, as we're going to discuss tonight, because elections carry high stakes and need lots of people organized seriously to win. And really, any chapter, even the really big ones, cannot pull off huge competitive elections if they don't have deep chapter buy-in, especially across tendencies and different areas of work. And so, yeah, as a leader, you have a responsibility to build a supportive, inclusive, welcoming culture and calling comrades who behave in ways that do not facilitate that. An unhealthy culture is one where people feel pressured into doing work, where people feel uncomfortable saying what they feel, where people bully others or treat people badly. Basically, any space where someone is enabled to behave badly is unhealthy. And an unhealthy culture never makes organizing easier. It always makes things harder and it destroys our work in the long run. And importantly, right, no one needs to endure abuse or work themselves to the bone for our work. We need to build an equitable and sustainable movement that can survive year over year, generation over generation, right? This is a long-term fight. So we can't burn ourselves out. We can't shed comrades for making them feel bad, right? Got to treat each other with respect. Okay, so first question to the group. Even if you're new to DSA, I want to hear from you. There are no wrong answers. What do you think electoral strategy, socialist electoral strategy is? What is socialist electoral strategy? And we can take stack. So especially because we have some new members here, if you want to answer any question tonight or speak up, just type stack in the chat like I just did, and I'll call on folks in the order that they get on stack. Like I said, no bad answers. John.
Yeah, I would guess like grassroots, get out the vote, working on the level of person to person communication with building relationships with people. Greg, love your cat.
It's Corey's, but yeah, she's lovely.
Yeah, John, that's definitely part of it. Uh, Anybody else? Let's go to Willie.
All right. I think that socialist electoral strategy refers to the approach that we take when engaging with electoral politics, especially running for office, building support, and push for systemic change through elections. It's not one unified method, but there are several schools of thought, real quick, such as building class consciousness, using the elections as a platform, and coalition building and down ballot focus, like winning local or state level offices, city council, schools, boards, state legislatures, prioritizing it over national races that allows for concrete reforms, visibility, and organizing on the ground.
Wow,
Dang.
great answer. Let's go to Megan.
I would say that we should use policy-focused empathetic campaigning to really connect with our communities, and especially focusing on those local races like Willie was talking about.
Awesome. All right, so let's get into some more detail. Great answers all around. So we want to run campaigns to change material conditions for the working class. So a successful campaign wins real material change for working class people, and builds power with the people we elect and through the issues we campaign on. Two, we want to directly confront the capitalist class by organizing working class people to take part in our own liberation and understand collective power through collective action. Three, we want to shift power away from the capitalist class and towards the working class for the long term. In other words, we have to fundamentally change the balance of power. Importantly, right, elections are a primary avenue through which working people experience politics. I wish that wasn't the case, okay? I may be an electoral organizer at DSA, but I wish we didn't have to run elections to engage most people where they're at politically, but that's just how most people engage with politics. That's because they offer a unique opportunity to talk to people at the doors and on the street about their problems and offer socialist ideas as a solution to those problems. They're a chance to clearly name our enemies and introduce community members to candidates who can serve as champions of socialism. And lastly, they're an opportunity to connect with community institutions that are already organizing and bring them together to learn through shared struggle. Willie had mentioned that about like coalition. Excuse me. So what is socialist electoral strategy? Let's get even more in the weeds. So traditional Democratic Party campaigns are entirely top-down and driven by consultants. Volunteers are treated as expendable, and successful field strategies are ignored because they don't lead to consultant fees. As a result, most campaigns are profoundly demoralizing for the everyday people who are inspired to volunteer for them. Further, the Democratic and Republican parties can reliably get votes just by picking their candidate, right? Whoever they support will automatically generate a certain amount of money, endorsements, and even guaranteed votes just with the stamp of the local establishment brand. And that's because parties have developed their own system of relationships, reputation, and experience over the past centuries that they can just draw upon today with very little effort, right? They also have capital, right? They have the capitalist system behind them as well. And so in order to challenge them consistently, both inside and outside of elections, we need to build our own enduring party-like structure that can beat them on all of these fronts. Now, DSA campaigns, right? When we run candidates, we are placing volunteer organizers, DSA members at the heart of the campaign, making sure that they have ownership of work and have multiple ways of meaningfully participating, which builds the structures necessary to establish our own alternative socialist power base. So clearly there's a difference, but what exactly defines that difference? Why does it occur, and how can we improve and maintain it? So what is the DSA difference for electoral campaigns? Well, we believe in high volume canvassing. We don't just knock a few doors, we knock a metric crap ton of doors, okay? And we can do that because we have an incredibly engaged volunteer base, right? Most organizations, they have volunteers, right? They've got people who sign up on a list. Maybe they donate once a month to an organization, but they don't have power. They don't have agency. Our members are socialists, right? We understand the long-term work we have to do to organize for the world we want to win. And so when we run elections, our members know that their labor, their organizing is going to have a meaningful, direct impact in building long-term power to win, again, the world we want to win. Logistical autonomy, right? Our campaigns do not rely on other institutions. Sometimes maybe we'll be in partnership with like labor unions, tenants unions, but we want to build campaigns that are built and run by working people, right? Not nonprofits with a bunch of staff or, the Democratic Party, right? We want to run candidates who can build independent campaign infrastructure with us. We also run campaigns with a long-term approach. So it's not just about giving yourselves lots of time to campaign. That's really important, right? Getting an early start, giving yourselves the maximum amount of time to run your race. It's also what happens after you win, right? How are you going to build power with the people you elect? How are you going to co-govern with them effectively? All of that, right? Part of a long-term approach. Ongoing leadership development. So in our campaigns, we want to be IDing potential new leaders and organizers and developing them through our campaign work. And our campaigns have active external communications, or FOMO posting. Okay, popcorn. What is FOMO?
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out, right. Okay, our campaigns are so hype that if people don't come to them, don't come out to canvas, they're going to see a group photo, like this one, and it's going to be like, oh shit, I wish I was at that canvas because that looks really awesome, right? So lots of good comms. Glad we got some comms folks on this call tonight. Okay, and so part of this magic is reliant on us endorsing people that are cadre members of DSA. What does that mean, right? That means that we want to run people who are committed leaders and organizers in our movement, who have fought with us on the front lines and organized alongside our members for many years or campaigns that we fought together, right? Sometimes great candidates can come to us from outside of DSA. Certainly, labor unions may organize and develop candidates that they run that we want to support. But the strongest DSA campaigns that I've participated in and observed at the national level happen when we run chapter leaders for office. And part of that is avoiding paper endorsements. And so what is a paper endorsement, right? A paper endorsement is when we endorse someone, but there is no commitment to actually campaigning to help them win or to organize with them after they win. This is just a rubber stamp. Okay, and this is what a lot of organizations on the left do. They will issue a rubber stamp. Maybe they'll send some donations. They'll send some emails, but they don't actually do anything to help the people they endorse get elected. And that's just fundamentally not our theory of change. If we're going to endorse a candidate, that means we are committed to seeing that race through to the very end and running to win with them. So why is there a DSA difference for electoral campaigns? Well, our campaigns have value. We issue value-driven endorsements, right? The candidates we endorse align deeply with the values of our members and the national organization. And we endorse with democratic org-wide buy-in. So again, when we endorse a candidate, every member of the chapter has an opportunity to vote to endorse that person, right? Everyone gets a say to democratically participate in that shift in strategy and that decision-making. And so when we endorse candidates, we want to have many organizing conversations with our members to talk to them about the stakes of the race and get them invested in doing that work. Political and financial independence, right? We don't run campaigns that are, funded by big dollar donors or nonprofits and grants. We run campaigns that are paid for by working people, right? Small dollar grassroots campaigns, just like the Bernie Sanders model. Sense of community, right? We want to run campaigns that build community in our chapters, right? The civic fabric of society has been eroded by capital, okay? And so life in this country is very isolating. So there's a lot of work for us to do as socialists to put the social in socialism, right? To actually organize our communities and build relationships with people. High material stakes, right? Campaigns we run have really high stakes. If someone loses, that could be life or death for whole communities, right? It could be the difference between us passing climate legislation that pulls pollution out of a community that is in a pollution zone for a fossil fuel plant or something, right? It could mean tenant protections in our communities to keep people housed so that they aren't evicted wrongfully by their landlord. It could mean taxing the rich to raise revenue to pay for transformative things in our communities. So our campaigns have really high material stakes, and we have to make sure that we communicate those stakes to our members. Lastly, on this slide, advanced internal organizing structures. So yes, we knock a lot of doors, but we also do comms, we do fundraising, data and tech, right? There's all these layers in a really well-organized electoral campaign that aren't just related to knocking doors. And all of that experience and institutional knowledge comes back to our chapters after a campaign to help us build an even stronger DSA chapter. And I promise this is the last slide with all the emojis. Membership growth. Okay, you guys, you won a big campaign last year, and I don't know, seems like Fort Collins is growing pretty good to me. You guys are one of the like really high-performing chapter in the country for growth, right? So we want to run campaigns that grow our chapters, that builds DSA, makes DSA bigger, right? Brings people into our movement. Local support in our regions. We want to run candidates that have a connection to the working class, that are running on platforms that are based in the material reality of the people we live near. National chapter collaboration, right? We're building this national fabric, political strategy across the country, right? That's me. That's the National Electoral Commission, right? That's your field organizer on staff. It's the connective tissue that makes DSA a national organization and not just a local one. Candidate accountability, right? Now I have this thing on here. It's two-way relationship. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. But this is about the relationship and expectations we have with the people we elect, right? As I mentioned earlier, recruiting cadre candidates. We want to recruit those, homegrown DSA members for office. And then lastly, non-canvassing capacity development, right? Like I said earlier, all those things that we do in elections that aren't related to just canvassing are also really important. Okay, so thank you for bearing with me. Now we got our group exercise. I want to talk through how we set the tone for the campaigns we want to build. And so this isn't really a messaging exercise. It's more about how we internalize our work as organizers in the conversations we have with our members. Okay, and so there are 4 words on the screen, and you can answer any of the 2 questions for any of the 4 words. What do these words mean to you? Or how would you translate these words into your work as organizers? And if you're new, maybe there's something that inspired you to join DSA. Maybe you saw solidarity in something that DSA did, right? It could be something you've experienced in the left. But yeah, anyone can jump on Stack, and I'll take some notes in our worksheet. See if we can get an answer for at least each of these 4 before we move on to the next question. Let's go to Colin. Oop, I need to unmute Colin. Try that. And if not, we can go to Ivan. Why don't we go to Ivan and then we'll come back to Colin if Colin can get mic working. Oh, you have no mic. Okay, no worries. Hey, Colin, if you put your note in chat, I'll add it to the minutes. But in the meantime, we can go to Ivan.
All right. I like the word solidaristic quite a bit. And to me, it's like that which is conducive to unifying the working class in service of their interests. I think that if any kind of revolution comes out of the DSA, it won't be us alone. It will be an alliance. It will be a long-term effort to bring together local activist scenes with shared goals. And I mean, I think to a protest I went to recently, which was the Stand Up for Science protest at CSU. There we were working with a STEM organization on campus. Half the marshals were from DSA. The other half were from Indivisible, which is a liberal progressive organization around here. All of the professors had their students walk out. That's the sort of alliance building I want. I want all of these people who have shared material interests and shared at least short-term goals to work together to make the world a better place.
That's a great answer. Let's go to, I got Colin's stack in the notes. Let's go to Steve, or sorry, Willie. Apologies.
Yeah, so for me, from a socialist perspective, I like the word empowering because for me it carries a deeper weight. It's not just personal resilience, it's collective liberation through dignity, solidarity, and access. Like, I just don't want to survive. I want everyone who's been chewed up and spit out by war, poverty, addiction, or the healthcare system to have a shot. Empowering means to me breaking the illusion that suffering is a personal failure and recognizing it as a systemic neglect. I know the cost of a country that valorizes soldiers but discards veterans, that lets working class people like me and everyone rot in silence for brain cancer while CEOs play golf. And then to me, empowering means accessible healthcare so no one has to choose between chemo or groceries, free education so broken men and single mothers can rebuild without debt, worker dignity so janitors, veterans, and waitresses and everyone in all stripes can walk with pride, and collective healing, where trauma isn't hidden in shame, but shared and soothed together. In this light, such as my cane, as someone who's going through cancer, becomes a symbol of resistance, not weakness. I want my scars to become testimony, not tragedy. And that's why I believe that coming into this is revolutionary, because I have a saying that goes, if I can rise, we all can, but only if we rise together. And I'll end it there. I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie. Let's go to, let's see, who's next? Let's go to Jackie.
I would pick inspired. I actually started coming to DSA events because you were hosting Palestine events. So I joined to participate in those, and seeing the organization and I guess solidarity that you guys had in those events is what inspired me to continue. So it's like looking for things that will bring people in and causes that are important to the world and your own community.
So awesome. Let's go to Joey.
All right, so I just want to say I picked all the other ones first. And as each person picked the next one, I had to think of a new one. Okay, but uplifting. So I'll speak on that. Can everybody see me? I don't know if my camera's
Yeah.
working.
Yeah, you're coming in clear.
So as far as uplifting goes, you know, I feel like the work that we do is about, first of all, making change. And the change that, if you look in the Discord at all the different groups, housing, trans rights, Palestine, it's like people that are, getting stepped on by society in large part. And, we're down, people are down here getting stepped on by capitalism. And something uplifting is literally, lifting up. And all these four really work together. But it's because it is inspiring, it is empowering to have people lift themselves up and work together. But I think the uplifting part is really the focus of what needs to be done. Start at the bottom, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that. Okay, so I've got Megan and Elaine on stack. I'm gonna go to make sure Elaine gets your stack in as well, but then I'm gonna close stack so we can keep going through the workshop. But yeah, Megan, go for it, and then we'll call on Elaine.
I was basically just going to say that all four of these words really just tie in well together, because I think that really you're out there to uplift everybody with excitement for the change that your candidate or you are wanting to put into our political system to work for the working people. You want to empower the working people to join you and feel like they have a voice in your campaign. And you are inspiring them to be excited about your campaign through those two things. And that, basically ties into our last word, where we're all in solidarity together, because we are all working towards making a better life for the working people.
Great answer. Love how you kind of got all four of them to connect, which is totally the idea of this exercise. Elaine, go ahead. You can close this out.
Yes, I was at the tail end, and uplifting was the one that was left, and I feel very uplifted because as you can see, I'm an old lady, and it's so invigorating to see young people because you know, there are so many really young people involved in this movement. So it makes me feel good about the future.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Elaine. All right, let's keep cooking. So these are the four I have. And you know, for me, I'm when I'm speaking about these things, obviously you can map these words out to all sorts of things about how we organize in DSA. But I've written a little about how I see these words as they relate to campaigns. So uplifting, members feel that the campaign is a positive experience and that their time is highly valued, right? Their time and labor is valued. Empowering, members see themselves as leaders and organizers and are encouraged and supported to take on more responsibility by other leaders and organizers in the campaign and in the chapter. Inspiring, the campaign speaks to big, long-term ideas and a positive vision of the future, right? In other words, we're intentionally messaging about why we are running and what we are going to do if we win. And solidaristic, the campaign builds and talks intentionally about community, takes care of the people involved, and has an external and internal message about collective power and collective well-being. Okay, so let's get into talking about like what makes a campaign strategic. So the big one is we have to make our campaigns intersectional. And so electoral campaigns aren't unique in this, but they are sort of dependent on it, which is to say that elections, if we're going to run someone for office, we have to talk to people outside of DSA, right? And we're not just talking to a few people, we're talking to tens of thousands of people about our candidate or our ballot initiative. And so every election is a historic opportunity to have thousands of conversations with working people and inoculate them to our theory of change, to potentially recruit them to DSA, and ultimately to build a working class base that we can steward after the campaign ends. And so in technical terms, when we go out to canvass a voter for a candidate, right, we usually got our phone, we've got a script, and we've got some questions in there like, you know, do you support candidate X on a scale of 1 to 5, right? But we're missing an opportunity if we don't use these conversations and these interactions as a way to talk about things beyond just the candidate. In fact, I would argue the best campaign message is one that doesn't really talk about the candidate, but talks about our theory of change and what we're fighting for. That's a much more compelling message than this candidate is great. Because people have been, you know, how many times have people been disappointed by a candidate, right? But movements are a lot harder to be disappointed by, right? If we build a strong movement, there's much more momentum there than just one individual person. And so my encouragement is that, like, whether you have a Palestine solidarity working group, a housing working group, a labor working group, an eco-socialist working group, every election you should be thinking about how can we use the conversations with voters to list build, to ID support for many different issues, and then take those supporters and continue to organize them towards other demands outside of elections. And so this is our next exercise. I want to talk through how we together through campaigns can connect the dots. And so we got two questions that we're going to work to answer together. We're going to do one at a time. And this is theoretical right now, right? Maybe you guys do an election this year, maybe you do an election next year, right? But like, I'm sure there's other things your chapter is organizing for. So the first question is, what other issues or priorities will your chapter work on this year that aren't electing a candidate to office? I assume you guys have maybe had like a convention. I think that's Greg. Go for it, Greg.
There's so many things. We're trying to get unionized Starbucks and unionized city workers. We want to potentially get it to be no longer illegal for people that are unhoused to sleep in their cars. We want to fight for this very broad reaching immigration defense bill. What else are we doing? There's so many things. That's at least a couple of them.
Awesome. Let's go to Joey.
Yeah, I'm not speaking for the chapter or anything like that. But just one, I think community outreach is really important. And years ago, I was involved with Chattanooga, Tennessee DSA, And one of the big things that we did was we organized to change out people's broken headlights, taillights, and stuff, just the bulbs. So like we would set up at an AutoZone or O'Reilly's and have an event saying, "Hey, come down here. If you've got a headlight or taillight out, you don't want to get pulled over by the cops. And I think it's really important not to get pulled over in Colorado by the cops here. And so, I mean, I'd like to get involved with something like that." As far as community outreach goes.
Yep. So like community outreach and mutual aid work. Let's go to John.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work with lobbying local and state legislators, trying to, right now we're formulating a city resolution for to make this a trans sanctuary city. There's also a lot of activity at city council meetings, county commission meetings, the county commission trying to prevent them from building a new natural gas energy plant. So there's a lot of like showing up to local government and trying, working at the local level where so many people feel their lives, touched by the government at that level.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to close stack because I think we got a lot of different things that the chapter's working on. So let's get to the second question, right? So we've got a theoretical campaign. We're going out, we're talking to thousands of voters about a candidate we've endorsed. How can we leverage that campaign to support these other demands? What are things that we can ask voters to do, that we can discuss with them to bring them closer to these issues using elections strategically? I got lots of ideas. Lots of things popped to my head immediately as you guys were listing these off, but I'm not gonna, no cheat codes. Let's go to Elaine.
I'm the chair of the Healthcare Justice Committee, and we're trying to work on education. And hopefully there will be elected or issues that folks have to vote on, and we want them to be informed.
It's like political education at the doors, right? We're talking to voters. We can have a conversation about the issue. We can maybe provide them some literature. Let's go to Megan.
I guess from like an electoral sense, when we're running a candidate, that I think it would be really important to use the community connections that we are working on through our other initiatives to bring to connect our candidate, if they're not already connected, to those groups and those movements, and really help with that empowering, inspiring part of that movement, to basically grow the word of that candidate that we're endorsing, and kind of and invigorate people to get out and vote for that candidate.
That's a good answer. Anybody else? Okay, Ivan's got one. Although we seem to be going in. Oh yeah, Ivan, go for it. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were one of the folks I was couldn't get on off mic. Go for it.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think a good use of elections, since they get so much publicity, is to get people into their local activist scene. And you can do that by messaging about the larger movement, like you said, or by just like giving people showing people how to join the organizations that have endorsed the candidate and are active in the local scene, including DSA.
So let's make sure, including DSA. Willie.
Yeah, I think for one of the suggestions I have for a strong electoral strategy would be hint for socialist ideas and policies hinges on framing, storytelling, and trust building, such as speaking to lived experience and not labels. Especially sometimes the word socialism can kind of have like a hostile or unfamiliar territory for some people. So I'd like to frame it that, like, quote, you work hard, healthcare, housing, and education should be guaranteed, or no one should go broke because you got sick. or you deserve a voice on the job. And that to me was what a socialist democracy really entails. And also using freedom in a way such as freedom from fear, such as freedom from medical debt, freedom from eviction, freedom to organize your workplace without having to worry about without having to worry about going through hoops, and then just telling personal stories, such as for me, like it's socialism to me, it's not about control, it's about empowerment, about having the working class have a say in their own lives and such. So it just makes the policies real and kind of makes like where you meet people where you're at and such, where they're at and such. So that's all.
Cool. So I'm going to get a little bit more specific with a few of these to give some examples. So let's use the mutual aid example. Okay, so very common in DSA, people who like to do break light clinics and, hand out food, all that stuff. They don't like to do electoral work. I'm not going to cast aspersions, but that seems like a missed opportunity to me, because if we have a mutual aid event like a break light clinic, you know how we make that more successful? We flyer in our communities. We talk to people about it before it happens, and then people will actually know it's happening. They'll come out to that event, right? We'll be able to have a bigger impact in the community because we've had conversations with people, letting them know that it's happening, right? We can network through them, tell them like, hey, do you know someone who could benefit from this? Make sure they come out. So like if we've got a mutual aid event and we're canvassing for a candidate, we should also be flyering for that event, right? Let's use the lobbying efforts as an example. So you want to make Fort Collins a trans sanctuary city, right? So there's going to be steps there, right? You've got targets that you have to pressure, right? There's going to be like local resolutions you have to pass, all those different steps, right? So like what happens if you've got a member of your city council who doesn't support your demand? You got to figure out how to pressure them, right? So like, let's say you're running an election in the area, you could go out there with petitions and you could collect petition signatures while you canvass for your candidate who supports trans sanctuary cities while maybe their opponent does not, right? So these are when I was trying to get to this exercise is the tactics, right? The specific actions that we can take while also campaigning for a candidate, right? Maybe we want to organize a town hall about this fossil fuel plant they're trying to build and how it's going to be terrible for our community, right? We go out there, we talk to voters, we can tell them, you should come to our town hall. You can hear from people who are experts. You can hear from community members that are scared about what this is going to mean for public health, right? And you can direct people to get involved and actually be organized into collective action through the campaign you're supporting. Okay, so this is kind of the creative thinking we have to engage in when we're running elections. We have to find ways to bring all these different interests together in support of a candidate while also furthering our broader, more long-term demands and goals. Because again, just electing good candidates isn't in and of itself an electoral strategy, right? It's about how we build power with the people we elect and how those elections are in service of longer-term strategic demands. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's talk a little about the power of class struggle elections and socialists in office. So we've got this framework in DSA that we like to use called district before candidate. And so if your chapter signs up for an electoral 201, which I would highly suggest that we organize, considering we had so many people on this call, it goes a little further from tonight's call to get into the specifics about campaign strategy and systems. But one of the things that we talk about there is district research. And so really what this is all about is like, we could have the greatest candidate in the world. Greg could want to run for office and it'd be like, Greg is the most cadre member of Fort Collins DSA, whatever, right? But like Greg decides that Greg's going to run, they're going to run in the worst possible district and they have no chance at winning. Well, I hate to break it to you. It doesn't matter how great Greg is. They're not going to be able to win if the district is shit. So like fundamentally, we got to do some district research. We got to do some analysis, right? We got to try to ID places where there are deep pockets of working people, where people may be more diverse or more working class, where maybe leftist candidates like Bernie Sanders or other competitive contests with a leftist challenger ran and almost won or did win, right? We want to identify the districts where DSA members can run and win, right? We don't want to beat ourselves to death running in places we can't have no chance of winning in. And trust me, there are a lot of those districts. There's probably more districts we can't win in than there are districts we can win in the near term. And so before we endorse candidates, because they're great on paper, we want to make sure that they have a real foundation beneath them and a real understanding of both like the district they're going to run in and their path to victory, right? What do they need to credibly run a competitive campaign? What about swing districts? So I've got some bad news for you. At least till today, there are next to no examples I can think of DSA members challenging Republicans and winning. Swing districts are really hard to run insurgent campaigns in. I'm not saying it's impossible, but again, there would need to be something in that district to tell you that like there are unaffiliated or independent voters that we can reach who maybe have been disillusioned by the other parties. Maybe there's a base of voters that we think we can split on populist issues. Well, yeah, it's like the left candidate. Yeah, it's like the Democrat running against a. I assume when you made it a swing district, it'd be like there's a Republican in the seat, and we want to run a Democrat for that seat. Not impossible, but again, you gotta. There has to be something in that district that tells you that you can win there, right? Just because the incumbent is a shitty Republican doesn't mean that they don't have a deep entrenched base of support that will carry them across the finish line, right? You got to find those strategic factors. So we've got this quote here from the National Electoral Strategy. Our candidates are socialist organizers with a relationship to a working class base, not just individuals who run on good ideas. Yes, 50% unaffiliated. Exactly, right? So like that unaffiliated block is going to matter a lot. And so you may want to look at demographics and voting patterns, right? To see if there's hints that maybe a, swing Republican district has this secret contingency of, unaffiliated voters who are just secretly leftists that we can win over, right? If we talk to them about like how we want to improve their material conditions and their working conditions, like maybe we can pull them in, right? But best to not necessarily jump into experimenting with that until you've done some more research. So we got some more questions. I want to really try to speed run these because we're a little behind. What makes for a good candidate? Let's go to engaging. It's a good answer. Let's go to Jackie.
I would say someone that supports their local populace, right? So it's like the opposite of what we see happening in politics right now. Like a good candidate wants to actually listen to their constituents and validate their feelings and their concerns or wants or whatever.
Right. Let's get a few more on this one. Let's go to Ivan.
A good candidate is someone, I mean, I was just going to build on that idea. Like, a good candidate is someone who is not just right now engaged with their community, but will continue to be engaged with their community after they are elected and actively seek out the the needs of their constituents, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great answer. Let's see. Let's get like one more answer on this one before we go to the next slide. Someone who has personal beef with capitalism. Yeah, why not? I agree with that. I mean, you gotta hate the system enough to run for office. The joke there is that running for office kind of sucks. So if you want to run for office, there's usually a couple screws loose upstairs. I hate to break it to you. Not always. Last call. Someone who's been affected by it and has the motivation. Yeah, it does. It sucks a lot. Running for office is really hard. All right, so let's go to the next slide. What should we expect of the socialist candidates we endorse? So we've endorsed somebody. What are our expectations of them? Again, this is not as much about like what we think their values should be. This is like, what do we expect them to do as a candidate? Collaborate. Yes. Deep and continued connection with the masses. It's great. Anybody else? Yeah, I like the popcorn in chat. Folks can get off mic if they want to jump on Stack, but if you have things you want to throw in chat too, I can copy paste them in. Promote our principles and messaging. It's great. Love that. Love when I got comms people on these calls. They have lots of commsy things to say. Build DSA. Yeah. I'd hope so. Yeah. Yeah. Calm. That's a good joke. But this is riffing on the comms jokes on this call. I'm not, by the way, I'm no way making fun of comms people on this call. Comms is everything. Gotta have good comms. Last call on this one. What are our expectations? Resist corruption. Yeah. Right? We don't want to elect people who are gonna have weak morals, are gonna end up being compromised by the capitalist class. You know, very quickly, people who are like, I love socialism, and then they'll be like, I love our small business community. And it's like, ah. Admit mistakes. Great answer. Yes, Greg. Transparency. You guys are cooking now. All right, I think we're good. I think we can go on to the next slide. Oh, we got one more from Colin. Subjecting self to the party line instead of going off on an individual path. Great answer. Okay, so let's go to the last question here. Okay, so we've endorsed somebody. We have expectations for them. What expectations do we have for our chapter and us? What are we holding ourselves up to? Knock all the doors, right? We got to do the work to win. Yes. Do the work to win. Knock all the doors. Also cooperation. Yep. Absolutely. Just win. Yeah. I'll do win in all caps with some exclamation marks for you, Billy. Yeah, losing sucks. Can't lose. Only winning allowed. Invigorate the community. Good answer. What else we got? Use the eyes on the candidate to mobilize people for our other work. Great answer. Kind of goes back to that intersectionality stuff that we were talking about, right? And then we've got John saying stay engaged. Great answers. You guys are killing it. Oops. And expand the electoral strategy. Yeah. Okay, let's be the last one. Translate the principles of the campaign to the language of the audience of voters. Oh my God, great answers, guys. You guys are killing it. All right, so let's get into some more detail. Okay, so when we're choosing candidates, there are some expectations that we should have, right? So ideally, they join DSA before they launch their campaign. Okay, you gotta be honest, right? DSA, we're racking up those W's, right? We got like Zoran Mamdani running in for mayor in New York City, currently like #2 in the polls. We're winning races all over the country. You guys won a big election last year, right? So we're racking up those wins. So lots of average people are going to come our way being like, I want your endorsement. I want your support. But it's like, all right, well, like, how committed are you to our movement? Because like the real magic here is that when electeds are really committed to DSA, when they see DSA as their political home, they're not going to just be here for the short-term advantage that we may provide them in their campaign, right? They're going to be there with us every step of the way to keep building. So ideally, a cadre leader of the chapter. They should definitely be running openly as a socialist, right? If someone says, are you a socialist? They're going to be like, yeah, and here's why. They're committed to building a campaign that is deeply enmeshed with the chapter, right? The campaign isn't some other thing. It's part of DSA. And then lastly, they should commit to meet and make decisions with the chapter once they're in office. Clear plan to win, right? So candidates come to us. We want to make sure either in coordination with them or that they have done some of this work themselves, that they have a history in the district and a clear relationship with working people, that they have a plan to win and bring in the members necessary to win the campaign, and that they see DSA as being their strategic partner and or that they are bringing in maybe other partners like labor unions, tenants unions, etc. And for me, I like to define that as organizations with a working class base, right? Because there's lots of nonprofits but they often don't have a lot of people. They have a lot of staffers, they have lists, they have donors. That's not the same thing as membership, right? It's one thing that's important here, right? Especially because we got a lot of new members on this call. There's a really big and a really important distinction between DSA and other organizations in the left. Okay, so like DSA, right? We are a member-led democratic dues-paying organization. When you pay dues to DSA, you're not just donating to DSA, right? You have power, you have agency, you get to democratically vote on what we work on. You get to elect our national leadership, right? You try doing that in any other nonprofit in the left, right? You're going to go to them, you're going to be like, hey, I think we should elect a new board of directors. And they're going to like look at you like, are you insane? What are you talking about? Okay. Like you donate $10 a month. You have no power here. Okay. Like they're going to give you some like things to do. Sure. And you'll feel good about that stuff. But that's being an activist, right? Being an organizer in DSA is understanding that there's a unique role for us to play as members of a dues paying organization, right? We are funding our own work. That is transformatively powerful. And oftentimes other organizations do not see eye to eye with us because they are not us. They don't, even if they have good politics, organizationally, there are lots of inherent contradictions in traditional nonprofit models. And so that is important to think about in the context of our electoral work and in the context of coalition work that DSA does. So yeah, just wanted to kind of flag that. Okay, getting back to this, sorry, clear plan to win. So clear, detailed campaign and field plan, right? So they know their win number. They know what it's going to take to have that path to victory, right? So then we get into SIO, Socialists in Office. Okay, so let's talk about some fundamentals for a Socialist in Office program and what it means to be a Socialist in Office. So when we endorse people, that's where SIO starts. Socialist in Office starts at endorsement. And so a DSA endorsement is a two-way relationship with the person we endorse. It is not a one-way relationship. Okay, so a DSA endorsement is not a means to elevate a candidate. That is a one-way relationship. A resource to award a candidate or a means to elect someone. A DSA endorsement is a strategy to grow the organization and build socialist power with the candidate. Two-way relationship, an opportunity to build a socialist campaign with the candidate, and a means to service the democratic socialist movement through a public office. So let's get into even more detail. Okay, so we've endorsed somebody. What does that two-way relationship mean during a campaign? What are the expectations we have? Okay, so one, for the candidate, we are going to invest, they're going to invest in rank and file DSA members to develop the skills necessary to run independent class struggle campaigns. Two, they are not going to treat the chapter as a third wheel or a junior partner. And lastly, they will bring chapter leaders and organizers into their kitchen cabinet, right, into their campaign, and they're not going to push us out when it comes time to make decisions. Expectations of our chapter when we endorse, right? We're not going to levy ultimatums against the people we endorse, but we're going to work to build a two-way relationship based on mutual respect and good faith communication. Two, we're going to treat the endorsed campaign as a chapter priority and invest the resources and labor necessary to ensure it is successful, to ensure we win. And then three, last, we won't play a passive role in the campaign, right? Or defer to other organizations on strategy and decision making. Okay, so now we've won. We elected somebody. So what is a two-way relationship with the candidate when they've successfully been seated in office, right? So expectations of the elected / candidate. They're committed to developing a co-governance project with our chapter as a socialist in office. And as a member of DSA, they're going to champion and work collectively with our chapter to advance chapter priorities. And they won't shut our chapter out of decision-making and strategy, but bring us in to build power together. Okay, but there's also expectations of our chapter, right? So what are those? Well, one, we're not going to push the candidate out, but we're going to bring them in when there's disagreement and conflict. And trust me, there's going to be a whole lot of disagreement and a whole lot of conflict. Even the most cadre electeds, even the most DSA members of DSA members that we elect. It could be Greg. It could be anyone on this call, okay? We're going to disagree with them at some point. We're going to have some kind of a beef. And you know what we have to do? We have to bring them in. We have to sit down. We have to have a real heart-to-heart conversation, right? But we can't like tweet about them and then make them feel like we just hate their guts, right? We actually have to have a real organizing conversation with the people we elect. We're going to develop our campaigns and our priorities with the office in mind, right? We've elected somebody, so let's use them to our advantage. Let's build power with them. Let's make our demands easier to win by organizing with them. And then lastly, we're going to work with the candidate to develop a shared vision and strategy that is based on an analysis of power and the material conditions of the working class. Okay, so let's talk through some ways that socialists in office can advance the project of class formation. So it's like, well, wait a minute, what is class formation? Okay, so I'm going to break it down. Class formation is more or less what Bernie described as the 99% versus the 1%. Okay, so in society, we've got what we call the popular classes, not just the working class, okay, because the working class is not a hegemonic force, right? Like at any given time, the working class may not constitute a political majority because the working class is divided. And so there are the popular classes, right? We've got some middle class folks, some upper middle class, maybe even like, upper working class folks, folks that maybe are not financially in a precarious state, but they still stand to benefit from the policies and reforms that we seek to enact, right, to improve the lives of working people and the working poor. And so there are three key points that our socialists in office can advance to this end. They can work to decommodify labor, okay? So they can make everyone's lives less dependent on the market, so they can exercise political autonomy and organize for power. Two, institutionalizing solidarity. Okay, using welfare policies and universal programs to bring the popular classes into material and social alignment, right? Rising tide lifts all boats. Okay, that's why Bernie was so popular, such a transformative political figure, right? Things like Medicare for all, public and social housing, public power, tuition-free public education. Okay, and then lastly, engaging directly in labor struggle by directing attention, resources, and strategy to workers on the front lines and to the unorganized, right? Using the bully pulpit of their office to lift workers up, right? To empower workers to transform their own lives through collective action. All right, so we're all following? Okay, socialists in office. So we've got some campaigns, we've got some good candidates. So now we got to organize to win. We have to make a plan to actually win our campaigns. Okay, and so I can tell you who this is. This is a New York City DSA comrade by the name of Michael Kanukin. Michael has provided a lot of really sage advice to DSA chapters all over the country in their electoral campaigns. And this is a quote that Michael gave to my home chapter 2 years ago when we ran a cadre member for state assembly. We'll talk a little about that later. Quote is, "A group of 10 committed comrades can change the politics of an entire region." This is super true. I've seen it with my own eyes. I saw it in my home chapter. 10 people can do this. However, there's a catch, okay? When Michael said comrades, what he meant was organizers. So 10 committed organizers who will bring many more people in with them to that fight can change the politics of an entire region. But it takes about 10 people to start something powerful. It takes about 10 people that are all kind of like on the same page together, working towards some shared goal to be effective. And let me see. Well, looks like we've got 14 people on here, not including me from Fort Collins DSA. So I think it's safe to say that the people on this call can change the politics of an entire region. I think you guys kind of already have started to change the politics of an entire region, if I'm being honest. You guys are a pretty cool chapter, but this is my favorite thing when I've got more than 10 people on this call. I can be like, well, you're already there. All right, anyway. So fundamentally, okay, we're going to be starting small, but we want to aim big, right? We may start with a small group of core leaders working on a project together, but our goal should be to bring many, many people into that project collectively, right? And so there's a common challenge we all run into when we run campaigns or we even organize, which is capacity. Okay, it's sort of the word that shall not be named in DSA. I saw Greg smile there because I know Greg has thought a lot about capacity. I'm sure there are many people on this call, I see Elaine smiling, who have thought a lot about capacity in their lives as organizers. And so, it's this thing, like we're always wondering, well, shit, we don't have enough capacity, or I don't know how we get more capacity to have more capacity. Capacity, it's like, do we have enough people and enough labor and enough time to win the thing we want to win? And oftentimes we got so many irons in the fire, so many different things happening that it can feel like we have no capacity to do anything. And it can be paralyzing. But we can't obsess about it. Okay. And we do have to make a plan for building it. But I'm not going to lie to you. Okay. Building capacity, replicating our experience and our skills in more members, recruiting people, bringing more people into our movement. It's really hard. It's really, really, really hard. But good strategic campaigns with lots of ladders to engage people in can absolutely help you build capacity and develop skilled organizers in your chapter on top of the people who are already there. And I think it boils down to two key points. One, that there's an equitable and strategic distribution of labor, that everyone has clear roles, responsibilities, and expectations of them as organizers and active members of the campaign and of the chapter. The work cannot fall on just a couple people, because if it does, you're going to fail. 2, an investment in uplifting as many people as possible to be confident and skilled organizers and leaders during your campaign, right? Remember at the top of this workshop, I said everyone is a leader, right? So like everyone here today, right? As you develop in DSA as a member and as an organizer, intentionally trying to ID people.
All right.
What?
I'm just gonna mute you. But intentionally trying to ID people who can be the next you, right? Who can be the next new member of DSA, the next organizer, the next leader in the chapter. And trust me, it is the greatest feeling ever when you can think of like 2 to 3 people that you have personally supported who, if you have to step back for any number of reasons, you know they've got your back. They're going to step up in your stead and they're going to carry the torch. And you know, my coworkers kind of make fun of me when I mention this part. It's my favorite line on the slide, so I got to say it. Sort of a morbid question we have to ask ourselves. Okay, we're part of a multi-generational movement. Okay, if I were to die tomorrow, who did I personally work to develop and uplift who can carry the movement forward after me? And maybe it's not even that I die tomorrow. Maybe it's just that I get sick, or a family member gets sick, or I lose my job, or my housing becomes more insecure, right? It's going to happen. There's going to be a day where you have to step back. And so this is, I think, one of the most critically important concepts for us to understand as members of DSA is that it is not about any of us as individuals. It is about the movement we are building collectively that will keep moving with or without us. Okay? And so what are some ways that we can start to move towards this framework and these goals? Well, a big one is list work, because reaching out to our comrades systematically is the best way to grow a campaign and grow a chapter. So I want to see a show of hands. Who knows what list work is? See Greg raising their hand. Seeing some hands go up. Jonah. Okay. Does anyone want to take a stab at defining list work? What is list work?
Is it just supposed to be us, or is it the people who didn't raise their hands?
No, it's somebody. It's got to be someone who raised their hands. Yeah.
Okay. Systematically going through our relationships with other people, literally usually a spreadsheet or something, in order to individually map out, your relationship with them, what they care about, what skills they have, what and reaching out to them, and usually making a small ask to try to bring them into the bullseye.
Yes. Speaking of the bullseye. Okay, so some of you may know
I
the
didn't
name
know that was coming. I actually
some of you may know the name Jane McAlevey, who unfortunately passed away last year. Jane is a legendary labor organizer, and part of the Labor Notes School of Organizing is this concept of the Labor Notes bullseye. And so this is a version of the bullseye that's kind of modeled on our membership. Okay, and so outside of the bullseye, the working class. Okay, we can make assumptions about what they believe, but again, they're not hegemonic, right? There's lots of contradictions in the politics of the working class. So until we talk to them, we don't really know who they are or what they believe, right? Then we got paper members of DSA, right? Folks who pay dues, but they aren't really that active in the organization, right? They come out periodically, but they're kind of on the periphery. Then we've got our supporters, right? Folks who are semi-regular, who come out every now and then, but they're not here all the time, right? Maybe if we make an ask of them, they come out, but they're a little irregular. Then we have active members, right? A lot of folks on this call, especially some of you new members, maybe you're, up and coming active member of the chapter, folks who come out to meetings and are actively involved in our campaigns, right? They're doing a lot of the work of the chapter. And then we have the core of our chapter, which is everyone who's in an elected leadership role and all the organic leaders, right? This is the group of people who keep the lights on, who make sure that the core functions of your chapter are continuing to move forward. Okay, and so our goal in doing list work, going through the list of our members, lists of supporters we've ID'd through our campaigns, is to actively bring people closer to the center of the bullseye. Because if we have more people in our core, we will have more organizers to bring more people into the bullseye. Okay, so one of the ways we can do that is through what is called one-on-one organizing conversation. So raise your hand if you know what a one-on-one organizing conversation is. Seeing a hand go up from Greg. Madeline, Joey. All right. So who here has been asked to attend a one-on-one organizing conversation? And that could just be like, hey, I want to get coffee with you. That's often how it's kind of framed. That's how they get you. They'll be like, let's get coffee. And then you're there talking for an hour. And they're like, do you want to run for the steering committee? What's happened to me at least.
Madeline and I may be having one of these conversations on Saturday.
See Connor, others, Megan. Okay, cool. Yeah, Ivan. All right, there we go. Who here has asked someone else to meet them for a one-on-one conversation? Greg, Connor, Blake, nice. Okay. Megan. Okay, now here's the real clincher. Probably not going to get a lot of hands for this one. Who on this call has done a one-on-one with at least one other person who's on this meeting right now? Ooh.
Feel like I probably have, but
So a lot of new members on this call, so I'm not surprised. Okay, but this is also telling me that some of our chapter leaders and more experienced active members on this call have some work to do.
Oh wait, I
Greg,
did.
you and I literally did a one-on-one.
I thought so, right?
Yeah, we did a one-on-one. Yes.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty sure, and I think Jonah and Nick did one too.
All right, all right.
I sort of like accidentally did one with John.
Yeah, our breakout session was just us.
All right, cool. Well, let's open it up to the group. What do we think makes for a good organizing conversation?
Listening.
Yes. Maybe the most important thing is listening.
I was also gonna say listening and just being respectful, figuring out what someone's priorities and interests are, you know.
Great answer. Building solidarity. Yep. Active listening.
If you have an ask,
Magic
leave it,
word.
Yeah, leave it at something relatively simple. Don't just overwhelm someone with like, we're doing all 80 of these things.
That's the word I look for when I ask this question, is active listening and have an ask. Fantastic. Let's talk through the 5 steps of an organizing conversation real quick. Lightning round. Step 1, we identify someone we want to talk to one-on-one. Okay, usually that person, they're getting more active in the chapter or in our campaign. They have a good rapport with other people. They bring a lot of good energy to our work. Okay, I call these folks the sparkly people. Okay, they show up, they do a lot of great stuff, and it's like, I got to get to know you because you're cool. All right, not everyone is cool. Everyone can be cool, but they got to work at it. But the sparkly people, they deserve your highest priority for one-on-ones. Okay, so step 2, got to ask them to meet with you one-on-one. Okay, got to do this face-to-face if you can, because it's a lot harder for someone to say no if you're looking at them dead in the eyes, right? And another trick here, okay, let's say it's like I'm talking to Greg and it's like, hey, Greg, I want to have a one-on-one. And Greg is like, okay, sure, sounds great. And I'll be like, all right, cool. Well, I guess we'll figure it out. Nope, it's like, Greg, let's look at our calendars right now. Let's whip our phones out and let's find a day and time where we can go get coffee together, maybe before our next canvas, okay? So make sure you commit to a real day, place, and time where you're going to have that conversation, right? Make it real, make it important. Step 3, do your one-on-one. Okay, 70% listening, 30% talking. If you're organizing it, you're going to spend most of it asking probing questions to get to know them. Okay, you want to center the theory of change, right? Collective power, the issues we're fighting for, and especially if this is related to your campaign, don't focus on the candidate because the candidate isn't the solution, right? They're just part of our strategy. And then lastly, bring some emotional vulnerability into that conversation, right? Be ready to open up a little bit about like what brought you to the struggle, right? What are some things that maybe you struggled with in your life that brought you into DSA, that brought you into doing a certain type of work? Okay, step 4, inoculation and agitation. So we take cues from our conversation by being an active listener, and we find ways to use the issues and the argument of our campaign to present their participation as a way to take action to address their material conditions and their self-interest, right? Let's say we're working to get someone elected to city council. they're going to be the deciding vote on whether or not we pass tenant protections in Fort Collins. Just an example. Okay. So like, I'm going to be talking to this person. They got evicted last year. And it's like, that shouldn't happen again. You know, I'm scared about losing my housing, right? It's like, how do we actually work to solve that together? Well, we've got this candidate. We want to work to get them elected, and we have a plan to organize with them for the next year to pass tenant protections in our city. So we can protect not just you and I, but everyone who's here who's renting, right? Example. Okay, and then last, call to question. You should go into that one-on-one with a really specific ask in mind, something that you specifically want them to do. Okay, so maybe it related, let's use the last example. Okay, I'm talking to someone who's, housing insecure. I want them to volunteer. So my ask is like, hey, listen, we have a canvas coming up. I know that you've been maybe a little shy. Maybe you're not like super excited about talking to voters, but we really need more people participating in this campaign. And I know you'll be great at it because you really care. You have a great story. Can you come out and like share your story with our members and also come out and talk to some folks today? Right? There we go. Okay. Had my little one-on-one mini slice. All right. So part of the reason we want to do these is because, again, it's about making asks. And part of the reason we make asks is because when we ask people to do things, we're ideally bringing them up a ladder of engagement. So what is a ladder of engagement? Well, fundamentally, our business, our work is getting people to go from taking individual action, right? Seeing themselves as a more traditional activist in the left, which is how many people come into DSA and come into left politics, to see themselves and to realize being an organizer and taking collective action, right? Doing things that will bring more people into our movement and into our campaign. So here's an example of a ladder that is very common in electoral campaigns. You've got an active volunteer or member knocking doors. They're coming out every Saturday. So I'm going to make an ask of them to text people who've signed up for our next canvas before it happens to ensure that we turn them out, right? So suddenly they went from just showing up to doing something that's going to help increase the number of people who come out at our next event. And they do that, and they're great. So now I'm going to ask them to be a field lead. And a field lead is a specific role in a campaign. It has a whole host of things that are all tied to bringing more people into the campaign, maybe calling our lists or onboarding people or shadowing new members at a canvas to teach them and mentor them and help guide them through conversations with voters, right? And so by the end of this arc, they go from being someone who just shows up to knock doors to someone who's taking on lots of organizing responsibilities in the chapter. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with a short story from my home chapter, really to kind of emphasize the importance of list work, which is Mid-Hudson Valley DSA and Sarah Hanna's assembly campaign in 2022. So bear with me, story time. I just got to get some of that like story time music to play during this. That'd be very funny. So humble beginnings. Okay, only small electoral campaigns prior to 2022. Okay, Mid-Hudson, relatively low member engagement. We only had about 10% of our members active in the chapter at any given time, which is about the national average for like how many members are actively showing up to things. We had a lot of common struggles around capacity and political direction. We participated as a junior partner in a lot of other campaigns that were organized by other organizations, but we didn't really lead a lot as a chapter in the local politics in the region. And so strategy takes shape. A multi-year campaign begins. In 2020, Mid-Hudson Valley begins working with New York City DSA on the formation of a campaign and coalition to win public power legislation in New York State. And in 2021, the first plank of our strategic plan comes into light with the introduction of the Build Public Renewables Act. And so BPRA, we ended up passing this bill in 2023, but it was the first major piece of Green New Deal legislation to pass in the country. It took the New York Power Authority, which is the largest publicly owned utility in the country. It was created by FDR when he was governor in the 40s, and it allowed them to build, own, and operate new renewable energy in the state of New York. And so we decided in New York that we didn't want Goldman Sachs owning our renewable energy transition. We wanted to transition to renewables that were publicly owned, that were owned by New Yorkers. And the amazing thing is that this bill was written by DSA members. It was written by socialists, and it was championed by our socialists in office in the state legislature. So how did we pass it, and how does electoral work fit into the equation? Well, in the summer of 2021, we power mapped the state legislature, and we determined that the state assembly and key state Senate seats were a major obstacle to passing our bill. And specifically, we lacked bill champions in upstate New York, where I live, where we had no socialists in office. So how do we pass it? Oh, sorry, same question. So in summer of 2021, we began researching assembly districts in our region in the Hudson Valley to determine if any were potentially strategic to challenge. And we identified the 103rd, a district with a 27-year incumbent who is to the right electorally of the district he represented and where our chapter had the most members. It's like a district where Bernie Sanders won 2-1 in like 80% of the towns in small cities. Crazy. Okay, we had Cynthia Nixon from Sex and the City ran for governor against Cuomo. She won 2-1. We had Zephyr Teachout, who was like a Bernie person who ran for district attorney, our attorney general of the state of New York, and won 2-1 against a bunch of people in our district. It was like this populist progressive bastion, and we were like, oh my God, why are we not running someone here? So at the time, our Eco-Socialist Working Group co-chair, Sarah Hannah Shrestha, is ID'd as a potential candidate due to her role as a county co-chair for our chapter in Ulster County, which is like 90% of the district. And she was also someone who had electoral experience. She was the campaign manager for a smaller campaign we ran in 2021, the year prior to her eventual run, where we unseated a 27-year incumbent who was the chair of the county legislature in Ulster County. And so what made her a strategic candidate? Well, she was an active organizer in our chapter who was trusted by our members because of her leadership on the Build Public Renewables Act campaign and because of her work in our electoral campaigns. And she had a really compelling story also. She's a first-generation immigrant from Nepal. She's a climate organizer, and her district is one that has been heavily affected by the rising cost of living in our region and by a price gouging utility company. We have the most unpopular utility in the state of New York, Central Hudson. Everyone hates them, and they're like sending people insanely high bills and like just sucking money out of their bank accounts. Like people living on fixed income who are deciding between keeping their lights on or paying for groceries. Like it's insane. And the irony is she had zero name recognition outside of DSA. She had only moved to the district in 2018. She had only been a member of DSA for a couple years, but that didn't stop us. So in 2022, we had 350 members in good standing. We knocked 56,000 doors that year, unseated a 27-year incumbent, Kevin Cahill, who is the chair of the Insurance Committee in the State Assembly. And we went on to lead the fight to pass the Build Public Renewables Act in her first year in office. And so our fight continues in New York now with her entering her second term. She won re-election last year. And so she has introduced first in the nation legislation called the Hudson Valley Power Authority Act, which stands to take over Central Hudson and make it a publicly owned, community-controlled utility company. And in her re-election campaign last year, not only did we ID thousands more supporters for her transformative piece of legislation, we also defeated her AIPAC-funded opponent 2-1. And this picture here is worth 1,000 words. This woman on her left is Senator Michelle Hinchy, who only a couple years prior to her first election hated our guts and didn't really want to work with us and opposed our climate goals. She is now the lead sponsor of our public power bill in the state Senate. So that's pretty cool. This woman here is County Executive Jen Metzger. Also didn't really care for DSA and also didn't support any of our climate bills and is now actively supporting the takeover of our regional privately owned utility. And this guy, this like giant blueberry, this guy over here, Republican town council member, he supports our takeover of Central Hudson. So like this picture for me is really worth 1,000 words. Like this is class formation happening in real time. We've got these politicians who never in a million years would have been supportive of our program who are now deeply aligned and actively campaigning to get this done. That's pretty cool.
You also have
Okay.
Aaron there.
What was that?
I was gonna say you also have Aaron there if you wanted to talk about
Yeah.
it.
Oh, wait, do we?
Yeah.
No, that's not Aaron. That's not Aaron. That's
Is
someone
that?
else. No. That's someone else. But that's Dan. That's our comrade Dan.
Oh,
from
sorry. I
DSA.
meant I got confused. Yeah, Dan. I thought there were two Aarons, not two Dan. Yeah, Dan.
No,
Dan.
you're good. So we're getting back now to close out with this conversation about list work, right? So in 2021, before she ran, we did deep list work of our chapter. We looked at our entire member list. We looked at every name. We made some assessments and we determined where are they on that bullseye, right? And from supporter to core, we had 38 people in our bullseye. In 2022, in December, after she won, we did it again. And after her race, we went from 38 people being in our bullseye to 143 people being in our bullseye. we had a 276% increase in member activity over the course of 12 months. And now, at the time, it was about 40% of our members being active in the chapter compared to 10%. It's come down since then. We're somewhere between 20 and 30%, but that still means that we have double the capacity, double the number of active people in our chapter compared to only 2 years ago. And that has been radically transformative for Mid-Hudson Valley DSA. And this is what that looked like in 2022. This was a kickoff that we organized in the city of Kingston, where I live. And I mean, this is just, to this day, I get teary-eyed when I think about this photo. I think about the political moment that we were in. It's just, it was a turning point for our work. And this is where Mid-Hudson is today. They're the second fastest growing chapter in the country as of last year. They grew 36% in 2024, second only to New York City DSA, a chapter that is like 8-10 times their size, like 7,000 members to 580. Okay. And so all this to say, there are no shortcuts. There is no such thing as an easy victory. There is no such thing as an easy win. There is no secret candidate that will suddenly just get all the votes they need to win a race without you having to put in any of the work. No wins come easily. And so I guess the parting advice here is, if you want to get here, you got to be ready to organize, not just do the individual actions, right? We go back to that ladder of engagement, right? It's going to take a lot of really committed organizers in any chapter to build something really, truly powerful. Okay. So we're a little over, and I can only give you a couple more minutes before I do have to jump tonight, but I just want to open it up for any last minute questions before we jump. And I'm going to stop the recording.